Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. So let's say you own a GY6 engine, whether it's on a scooter or on one of those off-road carts or whatever, and it's just not driving right. You know, you step on the gas and the belt kind of slips and squeals, and you're not getting the high end you used to get, right? It's not going as fast as it used to. And you put a bunch of miles on it, so it's ripe to change the belt inside of here, the torque converter belt. How hard is it to do? Could be the easiest thing in the world, or it could go very bad very quickly. Take these bolts out, no problem. You take the Kickstarter off, and I believe on a bunch of these, depending on what your scooter looks like or what your off-road vehicle looks like, you could do it without even removing the engine, right? Piece of cake, huh? And you're gonna watch me attempt to do it one-handed. I've already removed these bolts, so ratchet, 8 millimeters. I hope everybody's thrilled. So they're out. I've also already popped this cover off, and this is one thing I really want to warn everyone here about. As you're pulling this cover off, the Kickstarter shaft likes to come out with it, and when that happens, two things go wrong. First of all, there's a spring in here that keeps the Kickstarter shaft where it belongs. That spring likes to pop off, and at that point you kind of lose timing to the Kickstarter, and if you don't put it together properly, your Kickstarter will not work, or when you go to start it up, all the gears in the Kickstarter could be grinding, or quite honestly, if you don't put the shafts just right, you won't get this cover back on. So, is changing the belt the easiest thing in the world? Yes, unless something goes wrong, and I just told you what could go wrong. So take the bolts out, take this cover off, making sure, once again, your Kickstarter shaft does not slide out. If it slides out, bad. So very gently, you take it off, and there we are. There's the belt, and you're looking at it going, well, how do I get it off of here? You struggle with it, and it's not coming off unless you take this off. By the way, this Bando, they're kind of the better belts, so if you're out purchasing them, there you are. How do you get this belt off? Easy enough. I've already loosened it, so you just, once again, I'm right-handed, so not only am I doing it with one hand, I'm doing it with my left hand, right? So you take that off, you slide the belt off. Noticing I'm being careful because this whole thing could slip out, and if you don't keep pressure on it, behind this there's some weights and some bushings and all that. If you slide this out, all of it falls out, then you might, you know what I mean? So then you got to put it together, and you got to carefully put it back on. So you don't want this to fall out. Belt's out, and you just do the reverse to put it back in. This here, Kickstarter gear reduction shaft, or whatever you want to call it, this has a keyway that goes into this case. So if you don't align this just right and settle it in, you'll go to put that cover on, and you'll be like 3/8 of an inch out, 1/4 inch out, perhaps a little less, and the cover won't settle in, and you'll be tapping on it and grumbling to yourself, maybe using some blue language, going, what the heck am I doing wrong? And what you're doing wrong is, once again, this is keyed, and this key has to go into this case. You can see how this is on the bottom, which is you're stepping on it, it runs it out so that it goes against the gear in there and it works. But this is keyed against the case. You're going to make sure that's right. I'm going to show you the timing just in case you kind of screw up and knock things out. You see how this is all the way back against there, and there's a spring here that has to be beneath that clip. And let me tell you, that's kind of a bear to put together. I mean, you really kind of got to fight it as you're putting it together, so be careful about that. When you're dealing with this whole thing, take a look back here to make sure that none of the bushings have fallen off and they're lying around in here where they could get in trouble. Obviously, as you look at this, it should be kept clean. There is no oil in here. There are some reduction gears in here between this and the final output. And even with this cover on, right, this cover on, you can access this bolt. This bolt is how you put oil into this crankcase, and you'll know when you're full because you can't put any more oil in. Even with this cover on, that bolt is accessible. That's how you dump the oil out of this little crankcase here. If you're changing the belt, I recommend dumping that little bit of oil and putting some fresh stuff in there. Follow your manufacturer's recommendations. This one did not have anything in there, and I gotta tell you, it's very stiff. The bearings are not in very good shape in the back here. So when you're servicing your scooter or all-terrain vehicle, remember there is oil that goes back here, and you should change it. The oil change plug for the engine is right there. And if you're hauling the engine about, do be careful, because it's very easy to kind of bang, and if the engine's off, and like knock pieces off of it. In this case, they cracked the block on me. That's why this gets to be my my teaching engine. In a later video, and I already bought the aluminum welding rods, what I'd like to do is actually take that front cover off. And you know, you see it at the flea market where these guys like braze up aluminum cans. They got these zinc alloy rods that they, you know, fix holes in aluminum cans with, and engine blocks and everything else, aluminum engine blocks. So I think I'm going to try that on that, just as a learning lesson. And depending on how it turns out, I might just take the camera along for that. Put the belt back on, right? I mean, you settle it in, and a little easier to do if you have two hands, because you gotta settle this in deep here. But you can see, you slip it back on, put this back on, torque everything to spec, don't lose any of the washers or lock nuts, and life is good. So I hope this helped. And once again, what could go wrong? As you're taking the cover off, if you pull this out, that spring lets loose, you lose the timing, then you got to start all over again. I showed you how to time those up, and I warned you that this shaft has a keyway, and if you don't settle this shaft all the way in, and quite honestly the Kickstarter shaft all the way in, you're not putting this back together. You get the cover part way on, it won't go all the way on, and it's going to be a big pest. You're going to take a scooter or off-road go-kart that was running but the belt wasn't in very good shape to a non-running one in pieces that you can put on Craigslist and sell me really cheap. I appreciate everyone who watched and takes the time to comment. Please remember to keep your feet down, keep your heads up, and get out and enjoy each and every day. Bye now.